when the prosecution told everyone that P. Diddy in her mouth, that was shocking.
Dr. P. Diddy, you pee on me.
When Daniel Phillip comes on and says, no, actually the person who told me in her mouth was Cassie. And not only did she tell me that, she gave a tutorial and said, you want to do it slowly to make it last longer. The idea that Cassie says Combs her, and then she went back to his house sometime later and then her husband FaceTimed her. And she can't remember if she was actually had that man in her while she was FaceTiming her husband. That's not believable.
Sean Combs' PR team discovered actually paying off people outside the courthouse to wear free puffy t-shirts.
Why do you feel that way?
So these are all paid protesters. You can get $20 an hour if you wear a t-shirt.
You gotta speak up.
This, as evidence reveals, depraved Diddy constantly carried a Louis Vuitton bag stuffed with cocaine, ecstasy, pot, horse tranquilizer, and Plan B birth control.
And then this testimony got even more graphic than we can say here on TV. But it's so disturbing that Combs' 3 daughters who were in the court as a show of family support for him today, they walked out of the courtroom.
You shot straight, but you shot late. High 11. This is the Rundown Podcast.
I'm gonna give you the rundown.
Say man, hey man, hey man, it's OG Jucario. Now I'm back at you with another one. And in a tumultuous, drug-fueled, jealous, love and hate relationship between Cassie and Diddy, we're now into week 2 of the Diddy trial, where Cassie has already completed her testifying against Diddy and all those heinous, grotesque, nasty, disgusting things and physical and mental abuse that she put up with by being with Diddy all those 11 years. And she was asked, well, why did she stay? And at one time she said, well, Diddy paid all her bills and controlled her music career and things of that nature. And that was left at that. This is, seemingly the reason why she stayed, because Diddy was, taking care of her, right? And doing for her at the same time that she was, alleged to have been abused and used by Diddy and his sick, nefarious sexual endeavors that he tried to, get her to participate in as much as he can make her and coerce her. According to the state, they're saying that Diddy coerced this trafficking, with Cassie and these other male escorts. And being that Diddy kept his hands clean, Cassie was always the one that made these transactions or payments and things of that nature and set up these appointments with these escorts, these freak-offs, these FOs that she admitted to liking. And in shocking testimony, one of the escorts even testified that Cassie was the one that instructed him to give her a golden shower and instructed him while doing it to do it as slow as possible to make it last, while she laid there on the floor enjoying the showering, right? The golden hour of the day, the golden time of the day, as they say. And yeah, man, so that right there threw a loop in the whole trafficking thing, because now you have her coercing some of the male escorts, telling them how to do things, and this degrading act of being golden showered, right, by Diddy and another escort at the same time, while she laid there on the floor, inebriated and intoxicated and, high on whatever, okay? She's saying that sometimes she didn't like it, and then, this witness is saying, hey, well, she told me she loved it, and she even instructed me on how to do it to her. Okay, now that Cassie is done with her testimony and testifying in the Fed case against Diddy, right, trafficking and things of that nature, well, mostly the trafficking is what they're trying to pin him with, okay? Now we have the full transcripts of what was said and, Cassie's, testimony and her saying that, she admitted to loving the freak offs and missing them. All right. Now that right there is a big conflict, because she also says that she didn't like to do the freak offs. She didn't want to do the freak offs. So that's two conflicting things. And then when asked why did she say that, that she loved them and missed them, she said because she knew that's what Diddy loved and that's what he liked. So she tried her best to please him, and by saying that, she knew that would trigger Diddy to, be on good terms with her again, and she would call up and set up another freak off again on his request, even after the beatings, right? Days after, or even the day after, right? He put up in a hotel to heal up from these wounds, these bruises that he was, putting on her. Put her up for a couple of days, then she set up another freak off, right? And they would bond together with these drugs they were taking, allegedly, according to court documents, all right, in her testimony. When it started out, she knew that this is the type of lifestyle that Diddy was living. Diddy had 4 or 5 girlfriends at the time, and she had no problem with that. She was just going out partying and going to strip clubs and things earlier on in the relationship, even when Diddy was with the baby mother, Kim Porter. All right, that's right. According to court documents, Cassie and Diddy was, dating around the same time that Kim Porter and Diddy was still in a relationship. And this is the swingers aspect that Kim and Diddy were involved in and experimenting with at the time. And Cassie was well aware of Diddy's escapades with other women, but she just wanted to spend time with Diddy, as she testified to also. And she got upset and jealous when Diddy would give his time to other women, especially Kim Porter. And this upset Cassie. Now, in a Kim Porter tell-all book that was written and put out on Amazon and other platforms, this book right here, right, it details Puff's escapades and his appetite for sexual encounters with males, as far as him hitting on Tupac and how him and Pac fell out all because Pac was getting at Kim Porter. That's right, Pac was smashing her out, according to this tell-all book right here. And that's when Puff tried to shoot his shot, right? Now keep in mind, Kim and Puff were swingers. So Puff tried to shoot his shot at Pac, according to the tell-all book right here. And guess what? Pac wasn't having it. And maybe when Pac said, but you and I know what's going on, right? You can tell them people that you roll with whatever you want. That's what he told Puff. And maybe this is what Pac was speaking about. This lifestyle, this, thing that Puff was down with. Pac wasn't, allegedly. Now, Diddy and Cassie decided to call it quits in 2018. And this happens to be the same year that Kim Porter, the mother of Diddy's children, ended up dying. That's right, from complications of pneumonia. So this thing goes way back before Cassie. It goes back with Kim Porter. She has a similar story, right? Just like Cassie, trying to be coerced into certain things with other males, and Diddy, right, wanting to involve himself at the same time. Kim thought this was weird too, but she went along with it just because she knew that, she was in love with this guy. And this is what he liked, and this is what he loved to do. And this was just part of the industry. And if she wanted to be in the industry, she realized that this was a part of it, and she had to get down with the get down. After Cassie's testimony, we came to find out that the $30 million settlement that was reported and speculated was actually a $20 million settlement that she won against Diddy. And that was just settled in the 24-hour period. Probably one of the fastest law settlements ever, okay? And yeah, man, at the end of the day, that was new information. And people gave her 10 more million than, she actually got out of that case. But she backdoored, and it came out with new evidence that she is also suing the same hotel, the Intercontinental there in LA, where that abuse happened at, where, you know, it was filmed, and that's what we all seen on CNN for the first time, with Diddy hitting and kicking Cassie in that video, okay? And they're saying that that video was edited, it was sped up, right, to make the impacts of those kicks and punches look more dramatic. All right, now that came out as well, as many people speculated that the video had been edited right before it was put out to the public. So these are new things that are, you know, now exposed and, you know, have come to pass, as many people had already speculated before the trial. Now, some people believe that Diddy will walk on these charges and beat the feds. Now, some people believe that it's not a strong enough case, and this is the reason why Diddy will walk. And naysayers are saying, no, look, you know, this right here, you know, is not over yet, and the feds are still coming with evidence, all right, during this trial, and they will deliver a guilty verdict against Diddy, where he will have to spend the rest of his life in prison, according to some.
This idea of this mythical creature that can take ketamine and MDA and booze and then have for dozens of days on end and hours, that from a pharmacological standpoint, that's not possible. This idea that Cassie waits 10, 12 years to file a lawsuit and writes a book and then doesn't turn it over to a general publishing group, but sends it to Jay-Z's lawyer and says, by the way, we're going to put this out unless you pay us millions of dollars, bespeaks the real motives behind this. And let me just say this. Puff is not a good person. He's a bad woman beater and he's a coward. I know the guy. Everybody I know agrees with that. But this is not a case about domestic violence. The idea that Cassie had her own apartment, had her own money, had her own extra boyfriends or anything else does not speak to me as a traditional victim that we would see in a case of spousal abuse where this is ongoing. When the prosecution told everyone that P. Diddy in her mouth, that was shocking. When Daniel Phillip comes on and says, no, actually the person who told me to it in her mouth was Cassie. And not only did she tell me that, she gave a tutorial and said, you want to do it slowly to make it last longer. At that point in time, the old adage is you can't win a trial with the first witness, but you can sure lose a trial. That lost me. Because what you're talking about now is an allegation that this, and I'm going to use its Mandingo stereotype of this crazed black man who's being prosecuted by 5 white women who are saying this man's sexual needs are insatiable and they can have for hours and hours and never rest and always. That's not true from a pharmacological standpoint. That is absurd. The question is, why wasn't he prosecuted for all of these crimes that have allegedly occurred, but we save it all up and we bring it in this case? This is not a strong case. This is a case that if they prosecute it or defend it correctly, and you point out the idea that Cassie says Combs raped her and then she went back to his house sometime later and were having sex, and then her husband FaceTimed her, and she can't remember if she was actually had that man's genitals in her while she was FaceTiming her husband. That's not believable.
And he's so much of a monster, according to reports. Diddy's daughters got up and left out of the court proceeding, okay, during a trial, when a lot of this nasty and grotesque, disgusting sexual acts were being explained and being testified about in court. Now, these young girls, you know, these daughters of Diddy had to sit there and listen to the things that their dad put others and Cassie through. And a lot of things I imagine that they didn't know nothing about. And Diddy should have kept his family away from this hearing, because he knew that it was going to get nasty. But, you know, obviously, wasn't nothing to hide, right? I mean, this is their father, and those girls obviously were feeling embarrassed, right? Humiliated for their dad, because of their dad, right? And that's very unfair, right? But hey, this is their father and this is his sins. Now his children obviously have to bear his sins for the rest of their lives. Wowzers. Yeah.
Just this morning, the jury was seated. They are 12 in total with 6 alternates, and they consist of 8 men and also 4 women. The judge breezed through jury instructions, and both sides, the prosecution and the defense, completed opening statements all before the noon lunch break. They started witness testimony, and to talk about that is my colleague here, Lisa Evers. Lisa, you were in the courtroom, and the second witness actually had the most dramatic testimony of the day. Who was he and what did he say?
Well, Michelle, exactly. I just got out of the courtroom, was there today, and his name is Daniel Phillip. He identifies himself as a male strip show manager. He says that he was called by Cassie and booked for a bachelorette party at the Gramercy Park Hotel. Then when he gets to the Gramercy Park Hotel, he knocks on the door. There's no party going on. It's just Cassie, he said, wearing red lingerie, a red wig, sunglasses, and red platform shoes. She said, "I'm sorry, it's just me and my husband. Do you mind? Could you still come in?" He said yes. He goes in, and then he testified that they did baby oil massages, and then that led to sex, and that the entire time that this was going on, the man in the corner, her husband, that he later found out was Sean Combs, was pleasuring himself, but at the time he had a bathrobe on and had some of his face covered, and that this was not a one-off. There were many other occasions like this at various other locations, at both their Manhattan residences as well as at a number of other hotels that he named. And he said sometimes Sean Combs would get in and participate at the very end, but most of the time he would watch, and once or twice he was actually videotaping. And then this testimony got even more graphic than we can say here on TV. But it's so disturbing that Combs' 3 daughters, who were in the court as a show of family support for him today, they walked out of the courtroom.
Right, because the family took up about 2 of the first rows in the courtroom.
Now, just imagine Diddy's daughters having to sit there through all this testimony that we know about now, especially, with them getting out and leaving during the trial because of things that were said like this. Cassie said that she was expected to do freak-offs on her period. Now, if that wasn't gross, if that wasn't disgusting and grotesque, I don't know what is. And to be Diddy's daughters, and having to sit here and listen to the things that their dad forced this young lady at the time when Cassie was younger to do just to, be with him, right? That was very sickening to his daughter's stomachs. And they couldn't stomach it anymore and got up out of there. Now, it didn't say if they returned to the trial, but we do know that they did, in fact, leave during that disgusting testimony. And as far as I'm concerned, even if Diddy does beat the feds, right, beat this whole trial, okay, he still lost with his daughters, man. Think about it, right? They now, have been exposed to the lifestyle of their so-called hero, the father. That has another side of him. He's a monster, right? Did all these foul, nasty things, right? It's just gross. And how could they forgive him, right? Being that, this is now an embarrassment. This is now shameful to the family, right? So in my eyes, he's lost, even if he wins against the feds. But hey, what do I know? Now, the feds put out photos, images of these male escorts that were involved in this Diddy trial that he would solicit, according to the feds, for pleasure, okay, between him and Cassie and these male escorts. And one of them, Jonathan Odie, he's one of the guys that was a male escort. And he had a crazy story way before this trial even took place and way before Diddy was even arrested. He was going around telling this story, and he was the guy that was seen in the footage at the Trump Hotel shooting. After being arrested for a bizarre incident and crashing out there at the Trump Hotel, this guy, Jonathan Odie, a male escort, told law enforcement there that he had been involved with Diddy and Cassie, where he won a settlement, a couple of $1 million, because Cassie and Diddy gave him the herps, as they say. And this right here was very shocking information, and many people didn't believe Jonathan Odie back then. They thought he was just mental. And now it's coming out in trial that this guy actually was telling the truth, and he was one of those male escorts for Diddy and Cassie at that time, and to where he did, win a settlement, and they ended up paying this guy for infecting him, right, with this disease.
I had settlement with Sean, okay? I had sex with Cassie and Sean. Basically, he would masturbate and tell me what to do with Cassie. I had like 15 encounters, and I heard a lot of business. Because what they would do is Sean talks a lot on the phone and on the TV with speakers and stuff, and I was like a sex slave, okay? For them, that's what I was. That's all. Alright? I caught herpes, and I came back and I sued them for the herpes and won. They asked me to turn in that, which was the video recording, and I did so. They gave it back to me accidentally, and it's possible, I threw everything out, it's possible I can produce a copy.
Gotcha.
It's possible, I'm not sure.
Help me understand you.
Sure.
How old are you?
I'm 42. I've been through all my life. I've had a great life. I've settled $4.125 million with Diddy. Okay, but he's scared that I was an exposed.
And it's now being corroborated with Cassie saying right here in her testimony. They asked, were the UTIs painful? Ventura said very. Antibacterials didn't work anymore. How did it feel during freak-offs? And they're asking her, well, how did it feel if you were undergoing, these sores, right, during the time of freak-off? She says, it was burning. I would not advise it. And then they say, let's read this out loud. And Cassie says, I have all these sores on my tongue. I have another UTI, urinary tract infection. And now, so she's texting Puff this. She's texting Diddy this. I have all these sores on my tongue. I have another UTI. And this is, during the freak off, after the freak off. And he's still demanding and pushing and, insisting that she does this freak off. So this is very sick and disgusting all around the board, at this point. And I can see why Diddy's daughters got up out of there and left. Now, Cassie Ventura says she was very open with Diddy about these sores that she would get inside of her mouth from doing oral X doing these freak offs or freak outs, as Diddy would sometimes call them. And she said she even took the blame for things, being that she participated in these freak offs that caused her these sicknesses and diseases that she would undergo just to please and pleasure Puff and other men that Puff would have her pleasure for his enjoyment as he sat back and fondled himself according to court documents. Now it got so sick and disgusting during Cassie's testimony, especially when it got up to the question where they asked her what would happen after the escort finished on you. Now, this is called man's milk, if you're following me. This escort finished on her with his man milk, and she says that Sean would want it put on his body in the next room. So the male escort that she would take this man's milk from his finishing product, right? After finishing with her, she would take it to the next room, right? And Puff would want it put on his body. But check out where she says Diddy wanted her to put the man's milk at on his body. They said, did you do that? And Cassie said, I did. And they said, where? And she says, usually on his nipples. And they say, did you want to do that? She says, no. That was Diddy's thing. Now I'm just, paraphrasing here. That was Diddy's thing, but obviously it was, because This right here is very, very nasty and disgusting of Diddy, right? You want another man's secretions and juices on you? What kind of sick ritual is that? Wow. Now, at one point in Cassie's testimony, she even admits that she had knowledge and she had learned that what her and Diddy was into, renting these male escorts, paying them, for these freak off sessions, was illegal, right? And the judge asked the jury to strike that last answer from Cassie, given that information that she knew this was illegal activity that her and Diddy was involved in, right? Flying these escorts out, right? Paying them. This right here was illegal and she knew it, but she still indulged in this criminal activity. And the judge did not want these jurors, right, to, basically get contaminated with that information. But why not? It's the truth, isn't it? It happened. She even said it. So that right there was very telling that, they did not want, Cassie to take no type of accountability is what I got from that. Now, they asked, how did the cash get there? Now, this is where the feds come in at with the money, right? Sex trafficking, right? How did the money get there for these freak offs? Now, she specifically said that the security or Puff would bring the money in, okay? But at another point in the testimony, she said that she would pay, okay? She would set up these appointments with these male escorts. Puff never got his hands dirty. So, this right here is very conflicting with the other, testimony she gives on the other day. Now, throughout the trial, when Cassie was asked about the freak-offs and why did she continuously participate, she said she feared, how Puff would react if she didn't, right? She felt trapped is what she told the courts. And she also testified that, he would threaten her if she did not want to go through with the freak-offs. So now let's sum up everything so far. She's doing freak-offs on her period because she's scared, right? She's also, experiencing UTIs, urinary tract infections, sores in her mouth. They're saying this is from the herps. According to Jonathan Oddie, he said that he received a settlement, a couple of $1 million from Puff and Cassie for giving him the herps during these sexual escapades, right? These freak-offs, these freak-outs they would have. Now, the defense for Diddy, they went at Cassie very hard, right? And they asked about this rehab that she went to, she attended for sexual compulsion, right? Nymphomania activity that she had going on. And also drug activity that she was, putting herself through, experiencing these drugs that she would be on during these freak-offs. That she just had to have them, right? And they asked, well, did you get drugs on your own? And Cassie said this. And she says occasional drug dealers, opiates, Xanax, Valium. That's what she would get from these guys. And this was without Puff's help, okay? And she said even at one point, Puff had told some of the dealers around L.A., look, do not serve her nothing. Starve her out. Stall her out, Debo. Now, at one point, Cassie obviously started to feel like, well, why does he always call on me? Why is he always picking me to do the freak-offs? And she even directed him to go do a freak-off with Kim. Why does he keep bothering her to be involved with the freak-off? This is what she said, according to the court documents. It says, what did you write here? Cassie says, this is all we do. I'm just getting back on track. I'm sure you can call Kim or something. And they say, what did you mean by this? This is all we do. And then Cassie says, freak-offs. Talking about her and Puff. That's all they ever got, out of each other was freak-offs. And she was so fed up, she told him, hey, won't you go get Kim or something, right? Call her to do it. I'm sick of it. Tired, right? And pretty sure that ran Puff hot. And when asked did she recall all of the freak-offs, Cassie said that would be impossible. It was hundreds of them. Too many to count, right? And they said, did you want to stop? Cassie said, yes, I was humiliated. I didn't have those words then. I couldn't talk to anyone about it. And they said, did you tell him you didn't want to? She says, yes. And when they asked her how did she feel about these freak-offs, she said, I was an object being heavily objectified by men. Sometimes he would watch by FaceTime. So right here, Cassie is telling us that even when Diddy wasn't in the same city or the same room, hotel that she was in doing freak-offs, right? He would be on FaceTime watching, lurking in the camera, right? Was Johnson & Johnson, palm greased, okay, going to town, looking at Cassie getting it on. Wowzers. Yikes. So, let's get this straight. If Diddy wasn't there and he was on FaceTime, did he have that much power to make her do all these freak-offs even when he wasn't around? That's for the jury to decide, you guys. But according to Cassie, he did. When they asked Cassie how she would recover from a freak-off, she said, I take opiates. I wanted to feel numb. We'd get massages, IV fluids. The chef would cook us something. And then they said, how often did you take opiates after freak-offs? Cassie said, often. I got urinary tract infections. So right here, she's basically saying that she took these opiates, these drugs, because she wanted to feel numb the pain from these sores that she was contracting, breaking out from having these urinary tract infections. Also on top of that, right, from these freak-off sessions of being gross and nasty with these men of the night. Now, at one point in the testimony of Cassie, she admits that she will go on Craigslist and Backpage to find these male escorts, right? Some of them were dancers, right? Strippers or whatnot. And, you know, this right here is very damning to the prosecution because she's sitting up here admitting that even when she wasn't instructed to by Diddy, right, to go out and get escorts for both of them, she's insinuating that, you know, she did it on her own, okay, at times. And by her being admitted to this rehab for sexual compulsion, right, nymphomaniac, she just had to have it, right, 24 hours a day if she could. This right here painted a picture as if, you know, she was willing. She was a willing participant even when Diddy wasn't around to get her freak on. Wow. Yikes. Now, another piece of sick information that came out in this trial is that Diddy knew that he had an age and matureness over Cassie by this age difference. And according to court documents, okay, they asked Cassie, what is this? Cassie says, an email between me and Sean. They say, what did you call him? Cassie says, Pop Pop. And they ask why. Ventura says, he asked me what I called my grandfather. I did it, but now I think it was disrespectful. So this is telling us that Puff, you know, had an infatuation with being older, right, than Cassie. She was way younger. And obviously, he wanted, you know, this respect, right? He wanted this stature as this older guy in her life. And he wanted that so bad to where he made and instructed her to call him Pop Pop, just like her grandfather. Wow, that's sick. Now, there was a point in the testimony where Cassie said that she started dating other people, and Diddy, you know, suggested that. She started dating Kid Cudi, right? And Puff was jealous. She was jealous of Puff. And it was a big mess. And during this whole ordeal of her and Kid Cudi, she tried to keep it a secret. It only lasted for a month. Had a burner phone and everything to call Kid Cudi on. But guess what? Diddy found out, you guys. And ended up blowing up, according to Cassie, the car of Kid Cudi. And when Kid Cudi and Puff talked about the situation, according to Cassie, Kid Cudi asked Puff, hey, well, what about my car? Puff replied with, What car? Wow. Kind of sounds like Debo on Friday. What money? Right? What $200? Now, during the time that they were on and off during their little relationship, okay, Cassie said when they finally broke it off in 2018, she had a knife by her front door, and they showed an image of the knife by the front door, and they asked Cassie during the trial, well, why was the knife there? And Ventura says Sean was coming around a lot, so I had it. Now, keep in mind, they had already broken up. She was supposed to be moving on with this trainer that Diddy and her had, right, that she ended up marrying after the relationship with Diddy. And she had this knife to do what with it? To stab Diddy if he came over with disturbance of some sort? Because even after she had the knife at the door, she still had encounters with Diddy. Wow. Cassie said as the relationship came to an end, her and Diddy went to dinner to have like a closure, a farewell dinner, kind of. And at the end of that night, you know, Puff took her back to her apartment and he forced himself on her, is what Cassie said, on her living room floor. Right? She said she was crying and saying no, but it was fast. And his eyes were black. She says Puff wasn't himself. But later, after she claimed that Puff forced himself on her that night without her consent, she follows up with she consented into activity with him after the whole encounter. Now, according to reports, after she claimed Diddy forced himself on her after that dinner, right, she claims that she had consensual, right, intercourse with Diddy. And this was by her consent. And when asked why did she do that after she claimed Diddy forced himself on her in that recent situation, okay, she claimed that she still loved Diddy.
You testified your relationship with Sean ended in 2018. How was your health?
I was sleepwalking. I had PTSD.
At this moment, the defense objected, but the judge overruled it.
What's this?
A photo of my front door in 2018.
Publish it to the jury. Why is there a knife there?
Sean was coming around a lot, so I had it.
August 2018. What happened?
We were having a closure conversation at a restaurant in Malibu. He was trying to convince me to go to Burning Man.
Were you seeing anyone?
My now husband.
What happened next?
Sean came to my house and raped me on my living room floor. His eyes were black. It was like taking something from you.
You cried. What did Sean do?
He continued and f***ed inside of me. Then he got up and left.
Did you ever have sex with him again?
Yes, voluntarily. We had a good night. I went back to his house.
Can you explain why you did that after he raped you?
We had been together 10 years.
Ms. Ventura, you loved Mr. Combs, correct?
I did.
For 11 years, you took care of him.
In some ways.
You called him larger than life.
I did.
And during that time of them freaking off with each other when she consented, she got a FaceTime from her now husband, wondering what was going on and where she was at. And she answered that phone during the freak off session with Diddy while she was still dating Alex. Wow. It's nasty work. And it even came out in her testimony that Diddy was charging her for having that trainer, Alex Fine, who she married, right? All those years that he paid for the trainer for her and him. I'm guessing it was for both of them, but more likely just for her. And Diddy, you know, hit her with a tab after the relationship was over. Hey, well, you owe this much money for me, you know, employing this personal trainer who you just ran off with after our relationship. And he threatened her with freak off videos that he would release if she didn't get this money from Alex Fine. Now, Cassie Ventura did tell the jurors in that federal case that she wants to be compensated for the time and the pain. Okay? So she's basically saying all the time she spent with Diddy, right? All the pain that he put her through, the abuse, the cheating, right? The humiliation, the embarrassment, the shame, the ex rituals that was done upon her. And she had to participate in a lot of these shameful acts, okay? She's saying, hey, I should be paid for that. And she was well compensated for those years that she endured all that heartache, as they say. Now, I'm pretty sure Diddy was delighted to hear that people were actually wearing the shirts for $20 an hour that said "Free Diddy" in front of the federal court there during his trial. And, you know, this shows solidarity of some sort, in some way, some fashion, that they were out there actually in support of Diddy. But it came out in reports that they were actually paid by the PR firm of Bad Boy, you know, to wear these shirts for $20 an hour to look as if they're supporting Diddy at the trial.
Why do you feel that way?
So these are all paid protesters. You can get $20 an hour if you wear a t-shirt.
You gotta speak up.
She just got recruited, right?
I refuse.
You said no.
No.
It wasn't worth the 20?
No, but like he told me that it's for a Diddy coin, so I'm not really sure what that is. Yeah, they just tried to pay me $20 to wear a free fucking shirt.
Stop. I could tell because
the lady right there, she just kept convincing me to go wear a shirt, and I'm like, I'm good.
So just $20, and if you need $20, all you have to do is wear a free puff shirt. And you said no.
Yeah, I said no.
Did they say how many hours?
$20 an hour. And she told me she got paid like $60 yesterday for standing out there in 3 hours.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Popular YouTuber Gene Deal, he was there live on the scene at the Diddy trial, and many other YouTubers got a couple of words from him, and he did a couple of interviews and said a few things as he was on his way into the courtroom there at the Diddy trial.
This is Diddy's former bodyguard. We gotta proceed with caution. He will body slam my ass. But I'm gonna say, can we get a scoop?
I was just watching you last night. That's crazy. Thank you. I just saw your
Hey,
video.
sir. Good morning. How are you? Happy Monday. Can we get a scoop or anything new?
So what brings you in today?
Anything that used to happen that you might have seen?
Wow.
That you just willing to say? Okay. We got a reaction. That's cool. I can deal with that.
And Gene Deal, he goes back a long time talking about Diddy way before, you know, this RICO was even thought of, okay? Before people even thought Diddy would be arrested for anything close to this magnitude. Gene Deal had already been calling dude out on his scumbagness, all right? Dealing with Kim Porter, right? And as I mentioned earlier, Kim and Puff were swingers. And a lot of things that I said that were in that tell-all book, they have a, you know, as they say, a corroboration with a lot of things that were said in the trial about Diddy's sexuality.
His baby mom, Kim Porter, right? She got a whole lot of Tupac-related posts on her IG. She's right next to Puffy, and she's wearing the Tupac shirt. Did Tupac and Kim Porter know each other?
Bruh, all the people in the industry know at one time, Pac and Puff was like this. They was cool enough where they became enemies. Do you understand that? Where Pac didn't trust him no more, and where Puff idolized some of the things that he was doing. And you gotta remember, they was all swingers. Something happened between them two, and I don't know what it was, and I don't know what it is, that caused a friction between their relationship. Maybe Kim liked Pac more than she liked Puff, but she couldn't have Pac.
Now, when Gene Deal was being accused by one of the journalists there, I'm assuming that was a journalist that was heckling Gene and accusing him of knowing more than he was telling the public about his relationship and if he was involved in any criminal activity with Diddy back then, right? He was being accused of this by this journalist, and Gene quickly dispelled that and told that guy, hey, don't play with me.
Gene, if you've seen all of that and was at Puffy parties,
Don't play with me, bro.
And you the same size as Uncle Phil, and you the same size.
Hey, what's going on?
as Professor Ogilvy, and you the same size as Lucien Griez, Clive Davis.
How you doing? Okay.
Why you want us to believe that you weren't at them parties participating in that behavior, Gene? We heard everything you got to say on the line, Gene. Gene, are you a victim of Diddy?
Give him some space, y'all. Hold on.
Okay, hold on.
Wait.
Why are you testifying today?
Not at all.
You want? So why are you here? All right. Give him some
'Cause
space,
you were the
y'all.
original
Give him
person
some
that
space.
told us about Diddy for years.
Please give him some space.
I was never scared, and he never sued too. So tell us, why are you here then?
All right, watch our backs, y'all. Watch our backs.
Now, Cassie also shot down the accusation of drugs and the freak-off baby oil, okay? It was reported that there were no drugs mixed into the baby oil that Combs liked to use during the freak-offs, Ventura testified on May 15. A lawsuit filed against Combs in October 2024 alleged that he had laced the oil with GHB, or Rohypnol, which is often referred as a DR drug, if you know what I mean. And more reports that came out when Puff was arrested there in New York. Diddy was at that hotel when he was arrested by the feds, and it was reported that he had a pink substance that he had in his hotel room, along with some other pharmaceuticals that was taken as evidence, okay? And he also had a honey pack that I seen in that nightstand drawer, right? So Diddy was popping the honey packs and taking the pink substance, right? And freaking off. Even all the way up until his arrest, Diddy still had to have his meds. And he was getting it in all the way up until they slapped the cuffs on him, from what it seems like, you guys. So y'all get in the comment section and y'all let me know what y'all think about the entire ordeal. Will Puff beat the feds, or will the feds lock Diddy away for the rest of his life in prison? And until the next time, this is OG Jucario TV with the latest in rap, hip-hop, celebrity, and urban news. You're watching the Rundown Podcast. I appreciate everybody for spinning with me. I appreciate all my subscribers for sliding with your boy every time. And say, man, hey, man, keep hitting that like button, keep hitting that subscribe button, and look, turn on post notification so we can slide whenever I get the drop. You already know what it is, man. It's deeper than Buddha, her, you hear me? And guess what? I'm gone.